Oda introduced what may be one of the biggest lore drops in the entire series, known as the Harley. This ancient holy text, accompanied by a mural, details the story of the Void Century as well as that of before the Void Century, but because this text is all in Japanese, there are so many elements that got lost in translation. I tried my best last time to explain it and give my thoughts on it as well, but I had several people asking me to go even more in depth and to break down exactly what every sentence in the Harley means to make sure that they didn't miss out in anything. So in this video, I'm going to break down every single verse, word by word, hand translating them myself from Japanese to help you perfectly understand every element of the Harley so that this time nothing gets lost in translation. Yes, in the same way that people have studied and translated the verses of the Bible or Shakespeare's tales, here we're gonna break down Oda's Harley. For starters, the word Harley or Hali, as it's phonetically written like Hari in Japanese, is one whose real meaning is unknown, just as Yarul mentioned, but its kanji reading instead reads as holy texts, fundamentally serving as a narration of the deified events of history similar to something like the Bible or more accurately, the Edda of Norse mythology. So with that, let's begin by breaking down the first lines of the first chapter. Dai-ichi Sekai, the first world, same terminology that is used to refer to the first of Elbaf's worlds, the underworld, suggesting that Elbaf's worlds were likely named after the Harley. Chi ni hono ari, within the earth there be flame. In this case, chi means earth, an archaic term that was used in ancient times to refer to planet Earth, or specifically the plane of the land, particularly in texts such as that of the Bible and other archaic texts akin to the Harley. Could suggest that this old world really was originally the Earth, or at least similar to it, given the choice to use this terminology, but it could just be a poetic term for the land as a whole here. Ni here means within, in, on, or upon. It's a particle pinpointing the location that can either mean inside of, as in the flame was taken from inside the Earth, or simply upon, the flame was discovered on the Earth itself. Within is ambiguous enough that it encapsulates most meanings, so I think it's the best translation here. Hono means flame, not to be mistaken with fire, which uses a different kanji. It shares the same kanji with what was used to describe the mother flame, suggesting this is in fact referring to the mother flame. Ari means there be. It's an old poetic form of the verb to be that affirms the existence of something, hence why translated here as the similarly poetic there be. Hito wa yokubo o make, people succumbed to their greed. Hito wa here means people, sentence subject. Generic descriptor for individuals that doesn't specify race. Some translations used man for this, though this refers in the context of mankind, not to be confused with humans, ningen, or a single man, otoko. Yokubo means greed or desire, a more archaic form of yoku, which means greed or desire. The character York, or in Japanese literally yoku, is named after this term, greed, and this perhaps relates to the concept Lilith mentioned in chapter 1061 that all creatures succumb to their natural greed, as York eventually does too, as after all she is the aspect of greed of Vegapunk. Make means to lose, to succumb to. In this context, losing to your greed/desire means succumbing to one's own greed. Kindan no taiyo ni hureta, as they seized the forbidden sun. Kindan here means forbidden, prohibited, of course attributed to sun. Taiyo here means sun, the same term used to refer to the sun god and the sun in general in the series, which may tie into the larger symbolism between the forbidden sun, the mother flame in this case, and the sun god. In this sentence, given the previously established context, it would seem the forbidden sun is indeed referring to the mother flame. Hureta means touched or seized in past tense, with the subject being the previous sentence's people. It means to touch something, but depending on context can also mean as seizing it more aggressively, so perhaps seize that may be more correct here. Reizin wa negai, the enslaved wished and prayed. Reizin means the enslaved, sentence subject, an archaic form of slave, literally in this case meaning enslaved person, though it was also used archaically for those under servitude or being forced to work in slave-like conditions. Thus, here I used enslaved to be safer. Could even refer to workers or something like that. Negai means wish or prayer. It can mean the fairly synonymous act of wishing or praying, so both have been included here just to be safe. Once again, written in a fairly poetic, archaic form. Taiyo no kami wa awareta. The sun god appeared. Taiyo no kami is the sun god, sentence subject, written in the same way as Nika has always been referred to. In this case, sun god uses quotation marks in Japanese, but in Japanese, quotation marks are often used to emphasize in the same way that bolding does in English, so please keep in mind this is not the same as using quotations in English. In the past, sun god also carried quotations and bolding, but the other gods here do not, interestingly enough. Also written the same as the sun god in Nolan's flashback of chapter 287, with the other 3 gods for a total of 4 that were mentioned, also mostly matching to the other gods seen here in the Harley. And arawareta means appeared in past form. Chi no kami wa ikari. The earth god was furious. Chi no kami wa means the earth god, sentence subject. Uses the same earth used here as it was in the first line. It is written similarly to the god mentioned in the Nolan flashback of chapter 287, Daichi no kami, or god of the great earth, but it used a fairly synonymous word written slightly different, but it could just be a original name for this deity, likely being one and the same. Ikari means raged, was furious, refers to anger, rage, but written in an old poetic form, thus indicating an action of becoming enraged and angry. Goen no heibi to tomo ni, and together with the Hellflame Serpent. In this case, Goen no heibi means Hellflame Serpent. And the first word is a modification of hellfire, which refers to the fires of hell that burn those who have sinned. However, the second kanji of this word has been swapped with that of flame, making the word the more unique hell flame instead of hellfire, which is also more unique in Japanese. And this is likely to match the use of mother flame before, suggesting a connection with the serpent and the mother flame. And the second word is simply serpent, snake. It's also worth noting that Dori referred to the red line as a serpent in chapter 129, strongly suggesting this could be referring to the red line itself, harkening to the Norse myth and thus the Elbaf myth of the Jormungandr, the snake that envelops the whole world. Totomoni means together, with, alongside. And this indicates that the earth god performed this action together with the Hellflame Serpent, though to which extent this relationship was like, or if the serpent was controlled by in some form, is unclear. Sekai o shi to yami de tsutsunda, envelop the world in death and darkness. Sekai o means the world. In this case, the world is the object suffering the action, whereas the subject would be the earth god together with the Hellflame Serpent from previous lines. Shitoyami de means in death and darkness. First word means death, shi, while the second means darkness, yami. Worth noting that it's the same word as Blackbeard's fruit, the yami yami nomi, or dark dark fruit, darkness darkness fruit, but hard to say if it's just because the word simply means dark, or if there is a potential deeper connection, who knows. Tsutsunda means enveloped, past indicative, could also be translated as shrouded or wrapped, but it's worth noting it literally means enveloped, covering, perhaps in a very literal sense, as it could perhaps refer to the red line literally enveloping the whole world. And finally, karera wa mo aenai no da. They all could not meet together anymore. Karera wa is a third-person male plural pronoun, which would be they in English, the sentence subject. English treats third-person plural as gender-neutral they, so this slight nuance gets lost in translation, even though it may not matter much, as any large group of people with at least one male become a default male plural, similar to ils, elles in French, or ellos, ellas in Spanish, and so on. This seems to refer to a larger group of people rather than just two individuals, as in that case, something like futari wa, the two of them, would have been used, which is much more common and logical in Japanese when referring to two people. It's hard to say for sure given the poetic language, but it would seem very odd if this was just two people, hence why I used they all in here. Japanese often specifies subject through previous context, so you could infer that the subject is all those previously mentioned. As such, they here could be referring to all the people of the world being separated separated. As a note, in Japanese, pronouns refer to living creatures, but in a poem you could potentially consider them as a personification of inanimate objects. Though even if you considered the world being separated, in this case, it could also just refer to the people of said world being separated too. Mo here means anymore, could also mean again, but given the possibility that they may not have ever originally met, although frankly quite doubtful given the context, anymore is probably the safer translation, but simply it just means that these people will not be able to meet one more time or again, they just will never be able to rejoin. And finally, aenai no da means could not meet again, could not be together again, in negative past indicative. Indicates that they could not meet anymore following these events. Though more than simply meeting, the verb more poetically means to meet each other in the sense of frequenting each other, being together, and thus forming long-standing friendships. Interestingly, Bing Sasake also speaks of not being able to meet again with pretty much the same language, referring to the people who were separated. Dai ni sekai, the second world, same terminology that is used to refer to the second of Albaf's worlds, the Sun world. Kyomu ni ibuki ari, within the nothingness there be breath. Kyomo in this case means nothingness, could also be translated with the synonymous void, though it's worth noting this is a separate word from void century, which would more accurately translate to blank century. Blank as in the pages of a book rendered blank after the erasure of information. As such, it's important to distinguish that these two are separate, even if they are all fundamentally similar synonyms in the end. Ni in this case means again within, in, or upon, same as the first chapter. The sentence structure for the first line is identical across all three chapters. Ibuki means breath. In a poetic context, breath can mean a multitude of different things. It's unclear what this signifies specifically, but personally, I think it could refer to humanity and life re-arising, like the breath of humanity itself appearing from all that destruction and nothingness. Ari means there is, again, old poetic form of the verb to be that affirms the existence of something, like how it is used in the previous chapter. Mori no kami wa mao o tsukawaseta, the forest god sent forth devils. Mori no kami wa means here the forest god, sentence subject. Same exact writing as the forest god mentioned in Nolan's flashback of chapter 287. Ma here means devil or devils, sentence object. Unclear whether it's singular or plural, as Japanese doesn't distinguish, but is likely referring to either the creation of devil fruits or the original devils, so likely plural. Uses a more archaic word that refers to any kind of devil or devilish creature, though sharing the same etymology with that of devil fruits, akuma no mi. Some mistranslated it as magic due to sharing a similar etymology, as magic was seen as devilish witchcraft, but this is incorrect. Devils is the correct form here. Tsukawaseta means to send forth. This is a very tricky word to translate, as this kanji can be used for two different verbs. On one hand, it would generally be the verb to unleash or to bestow, but in the form it is written here though, this kanji would be the causative past indicative form of the verb to use, though this can encompass the meanings of using someone as in controlling them, particularly used for creatures, which might be why this went with the word tamed as a translation. I would argue though that send forth is probably more accurate, as it makes more sense that this forest god is using the devils in the sense of unleashing them upon the world. This also helps cover the possibility of the other meaning of the word, to unleashed, in the safest way possible, but still, this nuance is very important to keep in mind. Taiyo wa senka o hirogeru bakari da. The sun only aggravated the spread of the fires of war. Taiyo wa again means the sun, sentence subject. In this context, once again, could likely refer to the mother flame aggravating war as it was rediscovered. Senka means fires of war, sentence object. In this case, it uses fires instead of flames, though likely to distinguish the subject, which would be the mother flame, an object here being the fires of war. Hirogeru means to spread, extend, written in a neutral form here, as it is combined with the following word. Bakarida, which means to aggravate, which refers to making a situation worse, which in this case it was aggravating the spread, likely referring to the use of the mother flame to cause more war, such as Imu seemingly using the mother flame to shoot attacks with the ancient weapon Uranus, as also seen on the mural. Hangetsu no hito wa yume o mita. The people of the half moon had a dream. Hangetsu no hito wa means the people of the half moon, sentence subject. Once again here, hito is simply people, whereas hangetsu is literally just half moon, referring to the moon in a half phase. Many have pointed out how the shape of the half moon may refer to the shape of the deep. Yume o mita instead just means saw a dream. Yume, dream, is the sentence object, and mita is past form of to see. To see a dream in Japanese essentially means more poetically to have a dream. Tsuki no hito wa yume o mita. The people of the moon had a dream. Tsuki no hito wa here means the people of the moon, sentence subject. Same thing as previous sentence, except instead of half moon, it's simply moon here. Lunaria is derived from Latin, referring to moon people, and thus it's likely this sentence refers to them, the Lunaria, as they were seemingly major players of the Void Century alongside the D clan. Yume o mita means saw a dream, same as last sentence. The fact that both had a dream said back to back seems to suggest they shared the same dream, but it's hard to say for sure. Hito wa taiyo koroshi kami to nari. People killed the sun and became gods. Hito wa again here means people, the sentence subject, same generic descriptor. Taiyo means the sun, the sentence object, which in this case could either refer to the technology of the mother flame being lost, or more simply the sun god, in this era being Joy Boy, being killed. Then koroshi means killed, written in archaic form, and kami to nari means became gods. Given the subject being people, these gods is likely plural. Again, nari is the archaic form of to become, likely referring to the kings who became the celestial dragons after killing Joy Boy. And so, umi no kami wa arabutta, or the sea god, rampaged. Umi no kami is the sea god, sentence subject. In Nolan's flashback chapter 297, this god is referred to as the rain god, Ame no kami, though again it could just be a regional name for it, as rains are often associated with flood. And arabutta means rampaged in past form, essentially means to rampage, savagely destroy, or as we translated it as I quite like it, stormed. Some mistranslated it as grew furious despite being different words than what was used with the earth god in the first chapter. The sea god is most likely Imu, and it's likely referring to the rampage that was the attacks which led to the flooding of the world, particularly as it ends this tale of the Void Century. And Imu generally has been associated a lot with the sea itself. And finally, of course, again, karera wa mou aenai no da. They all could not meet together anymore, written in the same identical way as the first chapter. And finally, we have the Daisan Sekai, the third world. Same terminology, of course, that is used to refer to the third of Elbaf's worlds, the celestial world. Which, by the way, the celestial world, or also heaven world, or astral world, or even just sky world, uses the same kanji as in celestial dragons, 10, which is why I'm using here as well the word celestial world. Konton ni kuhaku ari. Within the chaos, there be void. Konton here means chaos, confusion, disorder, like referring to the chaos and confusion left after the century. Ni again means within, in, or upon, same thing as mentioned before. Kuhaku means void, same word used in Void Century, which more literally means blank, as again the pages of history having been left blank, literally combining the kanji of void or empty with that of white. And finally, ari, again the same thing, the old poetic form of the verb to be that affirms the existence of something. Futsugo na zanne wa yakusoku no hi o omoidashi. The meddlesome lingering shadows will recall the day of promise. Futsugona means inconvenient, meddlesome, adjective in this case of course for lingering shadows. Refers to something that is meddlesome or inconveniencing you, annoying. Reminds me of how Imu was annoyed by those seeking the poneglyphs, though Imu used different words in that case. Zanne means lingering shadows, sentence subject. Generally refers to the remnants of some people, though lingering shadows is the literal translation of its kanji, an old expression that refers to those who remain behind of a group of people, staying behind like a lingering shadow or after image. Similarly, Toki used the word shadows to refer to the scabbards inheriting Odin's will, so it likely speaks to the concept of inherited will. Yakusoku no hi means day of promise, sentence object, written in the same way that other characters have referred to the day of promise, such as the fisherman speaking of the day the Ark Noah will fulfill its true purpose. And omoidashi means recall, remember, an archaic form, so you could write it as either present or future tense. Katawaretsuki no koe o kiku, hearing the voices of the crescent moon. Katawaretsuki means waning or crescent moon, attributed to voices. Katawaretsuki literally means half-broken moon, but particularly is an archaic or more poetic term to refer to a waning or crescent moon, where it looks as if it were broken by having an indentation. This is most likely referring to the people of the Kozuki clan, as the crescent moon was their symbol, such as Odin's vest. Viz translated this as half-moon, but this is a different term than the half-moon used earlier, so I don't really agree with it. The moon, the half-moon, and the crescent moon are all different terms here, likely referring to different people, the Lunaria, the D clan, and the Kozuki clan. Some have noted this term had been used before in a previous chapter title for chapter 292, but that was simply referring to the phases of the moon as quoted in an old Japanese poem, and is thus most likely unrelated. A synonymous term is also used for chapter 28 for similar reason, just referring to the moon, so again, I don't think this really means anything specific. Koe means voices, sentence object. Unclear if it's singular or plural, but that shouldn't really matter much here. Hearing the voices of the crescent moon, or hearing the voices left behind by the Kozuki clan, fundamentally refers to reading the poneglyphs left behind by the Kozuki clan. Particularly, Roger referred to being able to hear the voices of the poneglyphs, such as in chapter 966, so this is likely very intentional here. And kiku means to hear, present future tense. Japanese again doesn't really distinguish. Being written from the past though, this is most likely future tense, though you could also write it here as hearing. Taiyo no kami wa odori, warai. The sun god dances, he laughs. Pretty straightforward. Taiyo no kami here is the sun god, sentence subject, and then it's to dance and to laugh in archaic form. Sekai o shumatsu e to michibiku. He leads towards world's end. Sekai o means the world, sentence object. Shumatsu e means towards the world's end. The use of e indicates direction, heading towards world's end itself. Michibiku means to lead, to guide, in present/future tense, again without distinguishing. And the formatting of this sentence adds ambiguity to the Harley, as you could interpret it as either the sun god leads the people towards the end of the world, or he leads the people in the face of the end of the world, emphasizing the duality between a destructor Nika or a savior Nika that the people of Albev cannot agree on. Taiyo kaikishi, the sun will return. Taiyo, again, the sun, the sentence subject. In this case, I think the word sun encompasses a lot of all the previous symbolic meanings. The mother flame being used for good like Vegapunk intended, but also the symbol of the sun as something that unites all races. Of course, with kaikishi, to return, to be revived in archaic form again. Atarashi asa ga kuru, a new morning will arrive. Atarashi means new, adjective for morning, whereas asa again means morning, sentence subject. It's important to note that this is a different word from dawn, usually written in one piece as yoake, but it is still likely referring to the same thing, as Oda here also uses ambiguous language such as flame rather than mother flame for the sake of adding mystery for the fans. And kuru, of course, means to come, to arrive, in present/future tense. And finally, karera wa kito aeru daro. I believe this time, surely, they will all meet together at last. Karera wa, same as before, referring to a seemingly large group of people being the sentence subject. Kito means surely, certainly. It indicates confidence that something will happen this time. Aeru means to meet, to be together as we mentioned, present/future tense, which in this case being sure that they will meet, likely referring to the people of the world finally being able to be united, as they'll be able to be together again at last. And finally, daro is something that is used to request affirmation, essentially acting as a rhetoric "you think so, right?" indicating that someone believes in something, similarly to surely. It adds a fairly personal touch, as asked directly by the one narrating here, which is why I used a subject of I believe in English here as well. I believe this time, surely, they will all meet together at last. So fundamentally, I think at this point we have a pretty general safe understanding of what the Harley is talking about. Within the Earth, the Mother Flame was discovered, but people abused it to the point the planet became polluted. The enslaved who suffered under them prayed for liberation, and so the original sun god Nika appeared, whatever form it may have taken. However, the first world came to an end as the Earth God, with the Hellflame Serpent, what likely is the Red Line, enveloped the world in death and darkness, though we don't know exactly how. In the second world, the original devils, or devil fruits, appeared thanks to the forest god, but the rediscovery of the Mother Flame only led to more conflict, particularly with what we know of the accounts of Nerona Imu unleashing attacks with the ancient weapon Uranus. The D people of the Half Moon and the Lunaria shared a dream, but ultimately Joy Boy was killed, with his killers becoming celestial dragons. Imu, seemingly the sea god here, rampaged and sunk the world by 200 meters, bringing an end to the second world. And thus, in the third world, even as the Void Century was lost in the past, thanks to the poneglyphs of the Crescent Moon, the Kolsky clan, there would be those who would remember the Day of Promise. As foreseen, Nika has returned and will lead towards World's End to ensure that the dawn returns, and as such, those that were separated in the first and second worlds will finally be able to unite, as all races are able to be connected as, if you may, one piece. So when you think about it, it doesn't necessarily introduce that many completely new concepts, but fundamentally the few new things that it establishes are: 1. The existence of the technologically advanced first world, which had been powered by the Mother Flame. 2. The fact that there was a first Nika prior to Joy Boy, but who was not a fruit user, with Joy Boy seemingly being the first user of the fruit based on the myth of the original Nika. Still unclear whether that Nika was real and became myth or was always fictional. 3. The creation of the Red Line seemingly having to do with the Hellflame Serpent and the Earth God that seemingly unleashed it, and it having been the core reason behind the first calamity, some way or another at least. 4. The devil fruits were seemingly made in the Void Century, supposedly by the Forest God, and 5. The D clan were seemingly called the People of the Half Moon, literally a D, though why they are called this way is still incredibly vague. On top of that, there are some things we could surmise from the murals, such as the Noah seemingly being used during the Great Flood to attempt to save people, just like Noah's Ark, or the ancient giants having been allies of Joy Boy, as well as the wolf-like creature that some of you may have suggested could be the guardian deity of Wano that parallels Yamato and his fruit, but again, it's hard to say for sure when we go into visual interpretation. The murals, though we can debate and argue on the little details, fundamentally represent these three conflicts. The end of the first world brought forth by the Hellflame Serpent, the end of the second world brought forth by the Great Flood caused by Imu, and the foreseeable world's end of the third world, brought about by a foreseen great conflict between all the races and the Devil King Imu. But will the end of this world be one brought because the devil will succeed, sinking all the races to cover the entire planet in its own essence, the sea itself, leaving nothing behind but the Red Line, the very thing that destroyed the original world in the first place? Or will the new world come by undoing said Red Line and freeing the world from what first separated it all along back then, and thus connecting all the seas and all the people of the world as one as they finally meet together again? The thematic symbolism here is pretty apparent, as Oda encourages us not to only take care of the world, but also to believe in a future where we can all come together to protect it. All we can do is believe, keep pressing forward, and help build the new world together. As long as we keep believing in what Nika stands for, that all races can be united under the same sun, then I truly believe, this time surely, we can all meet together at last.